So this video is all about why you will never be happy. There's actually a couple of reasons, and it's so important to recognize these reasons before you can actually make yourself happy. And in the end of this episode, I'm going to share the things that do make me happy and unhappy to give you the idea of how you can actually increase your ability to be happy. So, first of all, a little spoiler. There is no book or guru that will make you happy. Anybody who claims that they have the recipe for happiness, they're lying. Whether it's some guru or some love partner, happiness is a very complex thing that can't be taught, it can't be given. Now, having said so, I do believe, however, that aspiring for happiness is something that's worth doing. And I also do believe that most of us don't really take the time to figure out what it takes to be happy. And it's no wonder, because happiness is sort of a mystery. It's sort of a paradox. It's one of the most difficult things to achieve with willpower, and yet when it happens, it just happens so fluently, you know? It can come down from like the simplest things, like putting your feet in a bowl of hot water. First of all, your idea of happiness just does not exist. The first problem with happiness that you flat out don't know what happiness is. You wouldn't know what happiness was even if it came to you and sat on your head. You know, you wouldn't be able to recognize it. And I've said it in so many episodes that the word happiness, it's a very fuzzy word. It doesn't really mean anything. It sort of means glad, but there is almost a greater spiritual meaning behind it. And it's like a higher sense of appreciation that goes far beyond just getting a dopamine hit from a video game. It's like a feeling that can't really be constructed logically. And so we walk around with a vision of what happiness is to us, and honestly, it's just a very hollow construction in our mind. And that's why most of us think happiness is just being rich and famous, because we can sort of imagine the fun of that. But even rich and famous people will tell you that it's not the answer. Now, the second reason why you'll never be happy is because our minds are very counterintuitive. Our minds are designed to make us unhappy until we get what we want. But the minute we have it, we become unhappy again. Now, Buddhists will claim that the desire is the root of unhappiness. But my experience is that desire is still an essential part of the human experience. You know, if we don't desire things or love or anything, well, we become unhappy. And so I don't really buy into the whole idea of just, you know, sitting in a cave your entire life and meditating. Now, I'm sure that it will make some people happy, but for me, and I think most people, that would just be a giant waste of life. Now, I used to go to therapy for many years, and I remember one of the best advices I got from my therapist, and it was to have small and long-term goals, because you'll always be in a state of desiring goals. And sometimes looking forward to things actually gives us a sense of happiness. Because the moment you get what you want, you don't want it again, you know? So you don't want to be without goals. You always want to have something to be looking forward to. And I sort of look at it as hunger. You need hunger in order to get food, just like you need the desire to be happy, to have movement in your life. Because if you think about it, if you were 100% happy now, today, you wouldn't do anything anymore. Like, you would be completely content. Just like you would die if you didn't have hunger. And the third reason why you'll never be happy is because you don't really want to be happy. And I know this sounds like a very silly idea. You don't want to be happy? Of course I do. Well, not really. You see, the reason for this is because we live in a society that's all about productivity and the appearance of success. And most people live their lives doing things that they hate and avoiding things that they love. You know, it's sort of a paradoxical behavior. So for example, let's say you love playing with Lego, but because you're too old for Lego, because it's not cool to play with Lego, it doesn't impress people playing with Lego, you avoid it, you know? Maybe you hate exercise, you avoid it, even though it really makes you happy. Or let's say you hate exercise, but because society wants everybody to be in top shape so they can be more productive, you exercise despite the fact that you actually hate it. And maybe you even hate your job, but because it pays well and impresses people, you do it anyway. Because the truth is, you value superficial things like prestige above your own happiness. Like, you decide how you want to live your life. You're like in complete control, and yet, for some strange reason, you choose not to be happy most of the time. Now, a big part of all of this is our survival instinct, which supersedes our needs to be happy. And most life decisions we do are based on that survival instinct. So, why bother going for happiness? Well, the reason why I still believe happiness is worth going after is because while survival is important, you sort of have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of life? Is the idea and meaning of life to just survive? Is that worth going through all of this trouble for if it doesn't make you happy? Now, as cliche as that question is, it's funny to me how many people still prioritize a long but unhappy life. Now, here are some practical tips I can give to make yourself happier, but it's important to understand that sometimes the pursuit of happiness can lead to unhappiness. So don't overdo it. The best thing you can really do is to figure out the things in life that make you happy and unhappy. So we're sort of going to do this like an exercise where, I don't know, you can make like a list of things that make you happy and things that make you unhappy. And the idea here is to just increase the things that make you happy and decrease the things that make you unhappy. So for the purpose of this video, I wanted to share what makes me happy and unhappy. Now, the idea here is not to copy my answers, but to understand that, happiness and unhappiness is very different from person to person. So it will probably make more sense when you hear my things that make me happy and unhappy. So here are some things that make me unhappy, and I'm just going to mention a few. Exercise. Like, the reason I wanted to highlight this source of unhappiness is to describe that for me, it's really, really boring to be in a gym lifting weights or running. I can't think of more boring things to do with my time. Now, some people actually love doing these things, and I will feel jealous for them. But because, exercise is probably a good thing for your good being, and that's why I'm doing it. I like sports, like different racket sports, like tennis, because I can enjoy the game, and that makes me happy. But just the pure act of exercise for exercise's sake makes me miserable. I can't do it. And so usually I avoid it, but recently I picked it up for health reasons. Some of you might say that exercise does wonders for your well-being, and it's worth doing it for that reason. And for most of my life, it's not been my experience, but recently I have actually noticed that it has given me a boost when it comes to, the well-being of my mind. And some people say that you will live 10 years longer if you exercise, but the way I see it, you waste a lot of time just to live longer. Now, the second thing that makes me unhappy is politics. Because of the manipulative nature of politicians and media, and also the way friends and family turn on each other because, they're the polarizing powers of ideologies. You wouldn't believe how angry people got with me when I told them I would never vote again. So I sort of try to avoid discussions about politics in general. It's just not worth the time, and it makes me unhappy. The third thing that makes me unhappy is drama. I tend to avoid people who cause drama in my life. For example, my own mother. As much as I love her, talking to her, unfortunately, makes me very unhappy. And so the solution for that, even though it sounds very cold-hearted, is to avoid talking to her. Now, drama seems to make some people happy. It just doesn't work for me. It just makes me miserable all the time. So I simply avoid people in my life that hurt me through drama. And sometimes that can be difficult because these could be people who are close in your life. Another thing that makes me unhappy is travel. Now, this is a good one because most people actually love to travel, and I just don't. To me, traveling is just a lot of headache and worrying. It's spending the entire time just not feeling calm and relaxed because, I have to sort of make sure that, I have my passport, that I pick the right gate and stuff like that. My mom, on the other hand, she's like the complete opposite of that. She lives for traveling. So people are just very different. Another thing that makes me unhappy is guilt. Sometimes in the pursuit of happiness, I will actually follow my heart. And when people don't approve, I feel guilty from it. And guilt causes unhappiness. And I think that's why it's important that if you feel guilt in your head, it's important to sort of work it out so you feel less guilty. So for example, last year, my wife wanted to visit my hometown and I basically refused. As much as I wanted to do it with her, I just couldn't do it. And she was of course disappointed, which led me to feeling very guilty, which made me unhappy. But I sort of worked it out in my head because I have my reasons for not wanting to go to my hometown. It's just a place that reminds me of how depressed I used to be at some point. And I just refuse to bring any of that back into my life again. And I have to prioritize my happiness. But also, if we went, I would hate her for making me unhappy. So in the end, I really do believe that I made the right call and I stopped feeling guilty when I worked it out. Now we're going to talk about things that make me very happy. So first thing that comes to my head, you might have guessed it, YouTube. I just love something about standing in front of a camera or sitting and just doing this creative content for people in the world. It just makes me happy. You know, it's fun to know that people watch my videos and reading comments and replying to people. Everything about it just makes me very happy. The second thing, I love spending time with people that I love. Spending quality time with my wife and her family just makes me happy. You know, sharing a meal, having a barbecue, going to the beach, or spending Christmas together. And I don't understand the reason why it makes me or most people happy, but it just does, you know? And for some people, spending time with family, it's the opposite. It makes them unhappy. And it's important to understand and respect that. As an introvert, I tend to avoid birthday parties and weddings because there's just so many people and I just get so unhappy from all that noise. Now, my family understands this about me and they respect that. Some family members don't get that and they don't respect that. They would rather argue with me because they believe I should sacrifice my happiness to make them happy. And that's why it's important to have the right people in your life and avoid the people that make you unhappy. And sometimes this is hard. Okay, another thing that makes me very happy, tech gadgets. Just one of my most guilty pleasures in life is my addiction to tech. You know, smartphones, computers. I don't like the fact that these things make me happy because they cost a lot of money, but they just do make me happy, you know? Recently, I got a new laptop, despite the fact that my old laptop was just 3 years old and it was working just fine. And my wife sort of complained. She said it was a lot of money. And this may even sound hard for you to understand, but for me, it was worth $3,000. I love that computer. And I would rather put $3,000 on that instead of travel or a car or a kitchen renovation. Now, I could have argued back and I could have turned this whole thing into like a heated discussion, but I just told my wife, I don't want to talk about it. Because I knew that whatever I said, she just would not understand it. She doesn't understand it, that it makes me happy, because it would never make her happy. Later on, she did, however, apologize because she understood it on her own. And the reason why I wanted to use this example is to explain that we all have our own unique conditions for happiness, and not everyone will understand them. Okay, so here's just a final little tip about happiness. Sometimes the easiest thing in life is the hardest to understand. I would like to suggest that you try to have an open mind about this idea that life in itself is a miracle and you can experience happiness in every given moment. There are people who would experience pure happiness even in Auschwitz, likely out of necessity so they wouldn't go crazy. But my point is, it's possible because they did it. Now, happiness can be achieved in a shower, in the simple act of, getting a fresh breath of air or feeling the breeze hitting your face from the wind, or the sun warming your skin, or when you're with someone close to you, or maybe it's even when you're just alone in a room and just having fun and exciting thoughts. Without life, without existence, these little simple joys would not be possible. Now, like I said in the beginning of this video, you can't really be happy, at least not all the time, but I think it's worth pursuing those little moments of happiness. And that's what I have to say about happiness. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.